Hi, everybody. Welcome to our Newly Widowed program. Today is July the 5th, 2022. And today I am super excited. We have Dana Jackson Cruz with us, who's going to be talking about why what you eat matters in grief. Dana holds a master's degree in applied clinical nutrition. She loves to cook, make herbal tinctures and teas, and hang out with her family, including her favorite dogs, Bella and Dexter. Dana has been our Soaring Spirits Camp Widow operations manager for 12 years and has blended her love of nutrition with her dedication to helping widowed people to present this valuable workshop. Dana's one of my favorite people on the planet. Thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you, Mary. Thank you for everyone for sharing today and being here and letting me be here to share a little bit of what I know with you. Hearing everyone talk, I feel like maybe I have a little bit of information that I hope to share that might hit a little bit of nerve as we go along. And that was a very nice introduction, Mary. Thank you. So as you know, I've been widowed for 14 years. I love to cook, and cooking was one of the main things that helped me get, through on my journey. I would cry, I would cook, I'd cry, turn on the sappiest country music I could find because that just makes you want to cry. And that was how I did my healing early on. And even now, if I need to cry, I'll cook and turn on some sappy country music. And I don't even like country music. So, but not everyone likes to cook. So I get that. So let me go ahead and share my screen with you here. Okay, can we see that, Mary? Great.
So looks good if you can't see me.
Okay. So we're going to talk about health and wellness through nutrition, and really what you eat while grieving does matter. And when we think of nutrition, we think of food and diet. But as a functional nutritionist, there's actually more that goes together than just nutrition. Oops, sorry. How come I can't forward this?
You might have clicked off of it, Dane. Just try clicking on it again, and then there you go.
Sorry about that. So as a functional nutritionist, we look at the person as a whole, not just individual systems, and try to just treat that. We're going to treat everything together. So incorporating nutrition, we're also going to incorporate stress, sleep, and movement. And so when we talk about nutrition, we really have to talk about all four of these things, because what we eat also impacts our level of stress, also impacts our quality of sleep, and also impacts if we're moving or not moving, or our ability to. So we really have to talk about all of these things when we talk about nutrition. So we're going to kind of touch a little bit on all of this, and towards the end, we'll focus on what we can eat to help give us a general overall well-being of our body. And so let's go ahead and talk about stress. And in normal everyday life, I don't know anybody who doesn't have stress, but then when you put grief on top of that, it's huge, right? And we know stress just can impact every part of our body, from our mood and irritability, our mind fog. It can increase our risk of heart attacks and strokes, higher our cholesterol and blood pressure. It increases our inflammation and gives us like these tight joints and muscle tightness. And it depresses our immune system, so we can get sicker easier. And we have skin issues, brittle hair, nails, acne. And it really affects our absorption in our gut, which is really key, because that's where we're going to absorb all of our nutrients and our proteins and things that we really need to have a healthy body. So we have this thing in our body called the HPA axis, which is the hypothalamus, pituitary, and adrenal glands. And this is our stress response system. And this is just a really tight system that regulates when to turn on and when to turn off hormones. And our adrenal gland produces our hormones like our fight or flight, which is our epinephrine or norepinephrine. It also produces our sex hormones like estrogen and aldosterone. And it also produces cortisol, which is our main stress hormone released in our body. And I just want to show you what a normal saliva cortisol test looks like. And so this is just a test that we can swab the inside of our mouth 4 different time points throughout the day, usually early in the morning, and then throughout the day, and then ending around 10 or 11 o'clock. And this just gives us what our stress, how much cortisol is being produced. And if we look at this graph, we see here our green line, which is an average normal graph for cortisol production. And you can see we have our early morning when we wake up, a little bit of boost that's going to get us through the day. And as our day goes on, we're going to have lower amounts of cortisol produced, which is good because by that time we're hoping we can go to sleep. So cortisol is really beneficial to our body because it is a protective mechanism. And so we really need this to get us through those really stressful moments. But when we have too much cortisol being produced on an everyday basis, that actually diminishes those benefits and actually causes more stress and more inflammation in our body. So prolonged periods of cortisol is not good for our body, but for temporary times, it is really good. So if this is what a normal graph looks like, let's go ahead and look at what chronic stress might look like. And this might look to be what some of our current cortisol graphs may look like because, you know, early into our widowhood journey, we are under chronic stress. And so, you know, if we look here, we're going to see our normal average curve. But when we're under chronic stress, we're going to have elevated secretions of cortisol early in the morning. We're going to go down, it's going to deplete a little bit, but then towards later in the evening, 7 and 11 o'clock, it's going to rise a little bit. So this is going to make us feel really tired, but wired. So because we have this extra boost going. And so that's going to lead to insomnia and anxiety. And this is, you know, just higher than normal weeks on end chronic stress. But then when we get a little bit further along, we have chronic fatigue. We're going to have still elevated levels of cortisol. It's going to drop a little bit more rapidly earlier in the afternoon, and it's going to go down. So this is just really going to leave us with that midday slump and really feeling drowsiness, and we're just going to be feeling fatigued all day long. And then when we look at this burnout slide, which is also termed adrenal fatigue, and you will notice that here we have like 0 amount of cortisol produced. This is what's going to get us up. So getting below average amount of cortisol in the morning, this is going to, you know, we feel like we want to be in bed all day, right? It's hard to get up, and we're really going to have no cortisol throughout the day to just get us through. And this is just after chronic everyday producing of cortisol. Our adrenal glands are going to get a little worn out. And so there's just nothing more to produce. So we're going to have chronic exhaustion and just fatigue all day long, and irritability and kind of crazy food cravings. But I would like to just note that adrenal fatigue is not an accepted medical diagnosis at this moment. So the tiredness, the brain fog, the motivation, lack of can all be symptoms of other things like anemia and sleep apnea and autoimmune disease. So it's something to talk to your doctor about if you feel like this might be a thing, because there could be other issues alongside chronic adrenal fatigue. So how do we lower our cortisol levels naturally? I know it sounds a little funny, and why do we want to laugh when we're grieving? But laughter is one of the top things that you can do to lower your stress levels, which in turn lower your cortisol levels. just a little bit of laughter with friends, or just thinking about a funny situation you had with your person, lowers your stress, gives you this lightening off of the weight off of your shoulders. That's a reduced amount of stress. That's going to be really beneficial. Sleep. It seems like a lot of people have issues with sleep too. So sleep is going to be really important to help reduce stress and cortisol. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes as well. And exercise is really important, and not the HIIT exercise or the running 7 miles, because while those exercise is really good for your body, it also increases cortisol levels. It does its own amount of stress onto the body. So we want really gentle exercise like yoga or walking or stretching. That's going to be really soothing on the body and really beneficial. We want to reduce our caffeine and alcohol and sugars to help lower our cortisol levels as well. And breathing. And I think that was my word for today. I think it's really important that we just take a little bit of time. We have apps on our phones that can just remind us to take 10 seconds, 20 seconds to breathe. There is a direct line from your brain to your gut called the vagus nerve, that when you do breathing exercises, it's really beneficial for creating a really good environment in your gut, and to help those hormones that are produced in your gut to go on up to your brain. So breathing is extremely beneficial. And then just reducing stress and inflammation will definitely lower cortisol levels. And reducing stress, I know that's kind of like, well, how do I do that while I'm grieving? There are just ways that we can just sit and relax. And if it's stress in work or family or things like everyday things that we can maybe try to reduce, could be very beneficial to lowering our cortisol levels. So foods that can help lower these cortisol levels, vitamin B is really important, especially vitamin B12, which is found in animal proteins, and it can help metabolize cortisol. So if you have high levels of cortisol, getting extra vitamin B is really helpful. We have omega-3 fatty acids, which are found in anchovies and avocados and fatty fish and nuts and seeds. And these are really good to help promote an anti-inflammatory environment. We have omega-6 fatty acids that actually create a pro-inflammatory environment in our bodies. So the more omega-3s we can get, the better, lowering the amounts of inflammation, lowering the amounts of cortisol. And magnesium is one of my favorite supplements, mineral that is used in over 200 reactions in our body. And it is so beneficial for calming the muscles and the mind. And it is really good for metabolizing cortisol as well. And you find these in dark leafy greens and nuts and seeds and dark chocolate and broccoli. And protein is really important to help lower or balance blood sugar levels. When we have really high levels of cortisol going on all the time, that increases glucose levels, which then makes your blood glucose spike. And so when you have protein, that balances out that. So you have a nice even keel instead of roller coaster of spikes of blood glucose and downs, ups and downs, which affect our moods as well. And then we have fermented foods, which are found in kimchi and yogurt and sauerkraut, kombucha. 80% of our immune system is found in our gut. So keeping it healthy with probiotics is really important. And basically, these foods kind of follow a Mediterranean anti-inflammatory type food plan that are good when to eat when you're stressed out. And all of these foods help lower cortisol levels. So then we talk about sleep, because sleep is one of the most important things. And actually, sleep or lack of sleep has become such a health concern because there's such a huge amount of people in this country that do get less than 7 hours of sleep a night. And sleep is so important because it is needed for your body to repair, restore, and re-energize. And so getting less than 7 hours is not the best thing, because one, it can also lead to increasing risk of metabolic disease that includes diabetes and cardiovascular disease, like higher cholesterol and heart risks. And chronic sleep loss also leads to depression. So getting a good night's sleep is important. And in my early widowed journey, I would always say sleep is overrated. I've come to find out that that's actually not true. I do better when I get a little bit more sleep. So sleep hygiene and how can we improve it? Sleep hygiene is just kind of a catch-all term for practice and behaviors that influence sleep quality. And so the key components of this are to have a really consistent schedule. And I know that's really hard when we're newly widowed to find that schedule once our person is gone. But really trying to prioritize a little bit of time and prioritize sleep for ourselves, if that's, finding a consistent schedule of when you can go to bed every night. Try it for a couple days, see how you feel, and then maybe increase the amount of days in a week that you can get into bed by 8 o'clock. Maybe it's going to bed at 7 and reading for an hour. Being on a consistent schedule is probably one of the most important things that we can do to get a consistent amount of sleep. And temperature and darkness of room. So our environment is really important. They say 61 to 67 degrees is usually the most ideal temperature for sleep. So a little colder really helps the amount of time that it takes to fall asleep, and the amount of time and the quality of sleep. And the darkness of the room, blackout curtains, a mask over your eyes. So wherever you make your sleeping area, if you can make it as conducive to sleep, is really important. And then if we limit our amount of caffeine, I think this is pretty common for most people. If we stop within 3 hours of bedtime, I would even say like 5 hours to 6 hours before bedtime, can be beneficial to helping get to sleep faster. And we know our blue screens on our phones and our tablets and our TVs all kind of are not super great, actually, because they impact the melatonin secretions in our brain. That's our sleeping hormones. So the longer we're doing our screen time, the longer it's going to take for melatonin to start secreting. So that's going to take us longer to fall asleep. I don't know if you've noticed that if you have your phone reading through socials before you go to bed, how much longer does it take you to fall asleep? Your brain is still working a little bit. So if we reduce that even 5 minutes, 10 minutes before sleep, can be beneficial to helping that melatonin start secreting. And then we have apps on our phones too for meditation and breathing. I know I do a sleep meditation and I usually don't finish it because it is so helpful to just stop from what I'm thinking for the day and just focus on something else that doesn't have to be a part of the stress that I'm going through or anything that I've been dealing with for the day. So if finding a meditation app or some breathing app to help with sleep can be really great. And then we know that exercise, at least 30 minutes a day and anytime outside. I know someone mentioned they were outside over the weekend and how nice that was. That can really improve the duration of sleep as well. And getting a little bit of exercise, 20 to 30 minutes a day, that's something that you can see the results pretty quickly. It's not something that you have to continuously do for a couple weeks in order to see results like you're sleeping in better or not. This a little bit of exercise every day, getting outside every day can be seen pretty quickly. And I also just put correct pillow in here because sometimes our pillows are a little bit too fluffy or too smushed. And we wake up with a crick in our neck and we think, oh, that's just common, but that's actually not. And, if it's a simple change as correcting your pillow to give you a little bit better sleep, I think that is really an amazingly easy thing to do. I talked to someone recently and they said the pillow is such an amazing thing. They have a pillow from their chiropractor, and it has been the best thing that has helped them sleep for years now. So don't discount the pillow. So then we move on to exercise or movement. And we know the CDC recommends about 20 minutes a day of something that's going to get your heart rate up a little bit, get the blood flowing. Endorphins are really good for boosting pleasure and reducing pain. And exercising does increase your brain's sensitivity to serotonin and norepinephrine, and those are hormones that actually help ease the feelings of depression. So getting a little bit of exercise every day is going to be really helpful. And then we also think more energy goes along with regular exercise. So you do, a little 20 or 30-minute exercise, you get the blood flowing, you're going to get more oxygen and more energy going to your muscles. So that's going to boost you, give you a nice little energy boost. So when you go for that, maybe that afternoon coffee instead of a caffeine fix, maybe going for a little walk around the block, going for a walk up and down the stairs a couple times might give you the energy you need to make it through the afternoon without a caffeine fix. And like I said in the previous slide about sleep, 20 to 30 minutes a day of exercise, movement, indoors, outdoors, really can promote sleep. And it's something you can see very quickly, and you don't need to run a marathon to get better sleep from a little bit of exercise. And movement does also reduce the risk of chronic disease like type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular disease. So now we've moved on to nutrition, and this is probably my favorite part. And just to kind of start off with is that as a nutritionist, it's not my job to tell you what to eat, what not to eat, what is labeled as a good food and what is labeled as a bad food. I think there are so many ideas in today's culture that makes us think that something's bad, when in actuality, it's not bad. It just might not be the best choice. And so along those lines, I just tell people to eat what you love. And if that's a piece of pizza, eat it with all abandon and don't worry about it. I do make a recommendation that says when you do eat that piece of pizza, do eat a salad or a big bowl of veggies with that. That's going to help keep your anti-inflammatory cascade in line with your it's going to keep the anti-inflammatory cascade is going to keep down the inflammatory cascade. So that balance is really important. And so also don't avoid entire macronutrient groups. It's important not to avoid any kind of like carbohydrate group because you want to be ketogenic. Ketogenic diet does have a really important role in treatment of epilepsy and things like that. But as a whole, we really need these macronutrient groups to fuel our body as best we can. And that also is like low fat diet. You need that fat, you need good fat in your diet. And just, we want to incorporate whole foods, a little less processed food, reduce sugar and sodium. And most important is just drink water. I think one of the main things that I always tell newly widowed people is to breathe and drink water. If you don't do anything else, those two things should be pretty good, a good start. I included this eating plate from Harvard School of Public Health. This has replaced the old FDA food pyramid. I think this is a much better representation of what people should be eating. It gives you a better idea of how you should fill your plate. My only thing is that I would recommend filling fruits and vegetables to be 3/4 of your plate, and that whole grains and healthy protein be 1/4 of your plate. If we think about inflammation and how inflammation in our body also contributes to cortisol and to stress. If we keep our omega fatty 3 acids and our omega 6 fatty acids in line, then we have less inflammation. And omega 3 fatty acids are found in fatty fish. If people take codfish oil supplements like EPA, DHA, and green leafy vegetables and nuts and seeds, those are omega 3 fatty acids. Omega 6 fatty acids are found in animal protein, in safflower oil, and some walnuts and nuts and seeds as well. And these are essential fatty acids, meaning our body can't produce them on our own. So we have to get them from food. And so they are important to us, but we want to keep our levels of omega-3 good fats, healthy fats, anti-inflammatory fats, to our pro-inflammatory fats, which are omega-6s, at a really low level. So like 1 of omega-3s to maybe 17 of omega-6s. So when we look at this plate and we think of keeping our fruits and vegetables at 3/4 and our whole grains and proteins, which are omega-6s here, then we could keep a really balanced omega-3 to omega-6, 3 to 6 balance right here. So just important to think, as an example, a standard American diet has an omega-3 to omega-6 ratio close to 1 to 50. So if you think 1 of fruits and vegetables, green leafy fatty fish, to 50 of animal protein, just as a visual thing like this. So we want to really keep our anti-inflammatories high, our pro-inflammatories low. And so carbohydrates are good for you. So I said, don't eliminate macronutrient groups here. Carbohydrates are good for you. It's all about quality of carbohydrate. And so we want to really find our nutrient dense ones. So, we're going to find those in our whole grains, our sweet potatoes, our quinoa, fruits and vegetables. And yeah, so these are really nutrient dense carbohydrates. We have, and then these are the ones that we want to make better choices for. We can still eat our white bread with our cheese sandwiches, which are always so delicious, and our French fries, but just know that those don't have as much nutrients that will fuel our body as much as higher quality whole grains, sweet potatoes, nutrient dense carbohydrates. But also know that carbohydrates are our main source of fuel for our body. They are metabolized into glucose, which is then metabolized into ATP, which is our energy source. So when you need that quick energy, you're going to grab a banana or some avocado toast. Our body can also metabolize fat and protein, just not as efficiently. So just know carbohydrates, dense quality, are really good for you. Fats are also good for you. We have our olive oil and sunflower oils, nuts and seeds, avocado, fatty fish. These are all really important. These also help us feel fuller longer. And when we take reduced fat products from the manufacturer, they have to take out the fat and replace it with something. And usually that is refined sugars and starches that are going to go straight to our liver and cause an insulin spike. So fat, I'm not saying drink a whole cup of half and half, but if we're drinking a couple tablespoons in our coffee every day, that is not a bad thing. And your body really needs that good dense fat. And so then we also need fiber. Fiber is one of the most important things to help balance our blood sugar. It also balances and regulates our bowel movements, and it helps us feel fuller longer, along with oil, fat. And we can find this in fruits and oats and beans and vegetables, chia and flaxseed. And usually we should have 25 to 35 grams of fiber a day. And the average person, I would say, usually gets 10 to 15 grams of fiber. So bulking up a little bit on this green leafy vegetables is always a good thing. And then we have our protein, which is our last macronutrient that we need. And protein does give us our 9 essential amino acids that our body cannot make. We need 28 amino acids. 11 of those can be converted in our body, but there are 9 that we cannot, and we get these from animal proteins and from complete vegetarian protein. And so if we just look at this, a 4-ounce piece of chicken compared to a 4-ounce piece of steak and a 4-ounce piece of fish all have about 30 to 35 grams of protein. 1 cup of beans has about 15 grams of protein. And if we think of our protein needs being 0.8 to 1.2 grams per kilogram, easy math, if we are a 100-pound person and we need about 1 gram of protein, we're going to need about 50 grams of protein a day if we're a 100-pound person. So just think of that in terms of how much meat, how much animal protein that we're consuming. And our body actually absorbs animal protein much easier than protein from vegetables. So now if we put all of that together, what are we going to eat? And so, like I said earlier, is that I'm not going to tell you what you can and can't eat. But what I think is important is the food combinations. And so we always want to have a protein, a carb, a fat, and a fiber together. That's going to give us one balanced meal that's really going to fuel our body and give us the nutrients that we need. And so when we want that pizza, great, eat the pizza. That's going to give you some protein and some carb and fat. Have some salad. That's going to give you some bulk and some fiber. All of that together is going to make you fuller longer and it's going to digest much easier. Apples and cheese. That's a great mix of some carbohydrate and some protein and fat and fiber. And, you know, if we want our ice cream at night, that's great. Eat the ice cream. Include some nuts, add some peanut butter so we get some protein added into our ice cream. And we all love pasta, add some chicken and oil. That's going to give you a more balanced meal here with some protein, carb, fat, and fiber. So I wanted to mention this because I found this really fascinating. I've found a few articles recently talking about the amount of inflammation in the body of widowed people who are grieving the loss of their person. One article had taken blood samples of these individuals and found that they had elevated levels of pro-inflammatory cytokine production, which are in our bodies, made from macrophages and T cells, which we're going to need to go into all of that. But these also go to our brain to help with creating more stress and more depression feelings in our bodies. So I found it absolutely amazing that they actually had scientific data on this because we all know that widowed people have high levels of stress, and this just proves it, that we have high levels, and it just depends from early widowhood all the way up to a few years out. So even then there were still high levels of cytokines being produced. So we know that when we grieve, we are constantly producing pro-inflammatory. So if we go back to thinking about what our pro-inflammatory omega-6 is, if we can counteract a lot of the pro-inflammatory cytokines with anti-inflammatory foods, then that is a great combination to help lower the feelings of depression and stress and give our body the good, the anti-inflammatory things that will fight off the pro-inflammatory cytokines. And we can find that in a an anti-inflammatory diet is also considered a Mediterranean diet. So, we have our vegetables and our fruits at the bottom. And then we also, as we go up, we eat fewer processed foods. We can still include a glass of wine, which is always nice, but to really fight against the pro-inflammatory production, we want to really keep with our anti-inflammatory whole foods and really eat a lot of less inflamed foods, like fried foods, processed meats, refined carbs, and sodas, like that. So one more thing, which I find really important when we're grieving and things that we want to do to increase our health in either our mind, our fatigue, our brain fog, our gut, is actually to have a healthy gut. So healthy gut is a healthy brain. Like I had mentioned earlier about breathing, there's a direct line from the brain to our gut called the vagus nerve, and 90% of our serotonin is created in our gut. So those are our feel-good hormones. So if we have a healthy gut, we are going to produce what we need to do to actually help our brain, give our hormones to our brain that we need to help fight depression and stress. And there is a reason that the gut is referred to as a second brain. When you have that gut feeling, or maybe you have you have those butterflies in your gut, that little fluttery feeling, those are all why your gut is called your second brain. Things that we can do to really help keep that gut healthy is bone broth. Glutathione is an amino acid that is really amazing to keep the bacteria and the gut lining really healthy. Butyrate, which is from butter, also feeds our short chain fatty acids, which feed our good bacteria in our colon. So that's really important. And probiotics and prebiotics, starches, like resistant starches, like apples and things like that, that are really fibrous, that take a long time to go ahead and break down, are really beneficial. And when we have a healthy gut, we want to definitely reduce our stress and inflammation. And we can take ginger and turmeric, are really good spices to help with those two things as well. And of course, improving our diet is one of the most important things we can do for creating a healthy gut microbiome. And I just wanted to share that because I think we overlook our gut health for many people, we overlook our gut health. But what is going on in here can affect what's going on in our brain. So just something to think about. And, now I've told you everything what you should be eating, what we should be eating, right? Like all of our pairing of our food from our carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. But that's not always easy to eat those things, right? So as we're newly widowed, we've, sometimes we'll go through the entire day and not eat, which is not always great, right? So what I would kind of recommend, if that is where you're falling along these lines, that you're forgetting to eat because we're just dealing with all the stress and the grief, set a timer on your phone. Put breakfast, or do you always are you always ready for breakfast? Then make a timer for lunch and for dinner. Don't go through the entire day not eating because you forgot. Easy to set a timer. And we want to keep our blood glucose levels, our blood even throughout the day. So if we're skipping lunch and we're skipping dinner, maybe eating breakfast, our levels are going to be all over the place. And when we have low blood sugar, we're going to feel shaky. We're not going to feel great in our brain. We're going to have brain fog like that. So if we can snack throughout the day, it doesn't even have to be a full meal. It can be snacks. Eat some trail mix, maybe eat some peanut butter bread, anything like this that will nourish your body, give you the strength that you need to help deal with the grief that you're going through, is going to be very beneficial. And we overlook food to help in the process, and we don't need to, because there are so many good foods that help alleviate stress and lower our cortisol And all of these things together are really going to be beneficial and helpful on our grief journey. And just be kind to yourself. If you don't feel like eating, don't eat. But chances are, if you can do a little bit here and there and just give your body the energy and the fuel that it needs, will make you feel better. And I gave Mary a harvest bowl recipe PDF handout that you can take. I think this is one of the most easy things that we can make that doesn't require a lot of thought. A lot of times I just throw these together with the things that I have in my fridge, and it has your carbohydrates, your healthy fat, your proteins, and your fiber. So this is going to be really easy. And and for those who don't like to cook and don't like to prep, stores now have really easy, convenient items that have already cut up your fruits and vegetables, have almost everything ready to go. So grab a bag of salad. They even make hard-boiled eggs and pre-cooked chicken. So if that's easier for you, this harvest bowl is easy to make. And actually, you can make any variation you want, so it can last. You can have something different every single day of the week. And then I also gave her this little handout as well. So it just has some lists of omega-6 fatty acids and omega-3 fatty acids, where you can find them in food. And I think that is all I have. So,
Thank you, Dana.
I know I went a few minutes over, so if you have any questions, please ask away. And I hope it was a good amount of information that you could take away and, start sleeping better, start reducing cortisol levels, pairing food.
Thank you, Dana, so much. I'm going to stop our recording so we can get to any questions or comments that we might have. For those watching on the replay, thank you so much for joining us.